Today on the Narrow Road podcast within you, we've got Stef Thomas, author of 3 best-selling networking books and the UK's foremost authority on business networking. Stef Thomas, thanks so much, Stef, for doing this. I really, really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you for inviting me and for the big up just then, actually. I like being introduced like that. I always enjoy talking to you anyway, Danny. So doing this and us being recorded, yeah, I just like that. Yeah. I just like the idea of it.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much, Stef, because, you know, how this has come about is, Stef, I've listened to you speak. I've been at events when you've spoke. You've quite gratefully spoke at an event I've run. So I've known you we've known each other for what must be 8 years or so. Something like that. We've got sort of a mutual friend in Brad Burton, and how this came about is that I read a post that you put on Facebook, which knocked me socks off, and I listened to Brad's podcast where you. One of your 3 now what moments was what we're going to speak about. And that I just thought, shit, if more people did what Stef's done, it would help everyone. So I'm conscious of the time. Could you just give us a quick introduction for yourself, maybe your background, Stef, and why we're sat where we are now? What do you think maybe has happened? Basically, timeline as to why you think we're sat here now.
Yeah, I reckon that business networking show, which is when you introduced me on stage.
Best entrance ever.
I think that was 2013. 2013 or 2014. So that's 6 or 7 years ago.
Might have been 15, maybe. Might have been 15.
Was it? Okay.
Ace of Spades with the best entrance I have ever seen in any event or anything. It was fantastic. The crowd were going berserk, weren't they? Fantastic.
And isn't that a great place for us to start? Because I've always got my props ready, so that's who I am. I'm the author of Business Networking for Dummies. I speak on stage. Up until lockdown, I was living the dream and speaking all across Europe. And yeah, I do this very childish thing when I'm allowed of having Ace of Spades and having dry ice when I come on stage, and I'm sort of living the dream. And I think that's maybe why people were surprised. I wanted to get it out of the way this year because it's 2 years since it happened. People were surprised that I'd been in mental hospital and not by my own choice. And relatively recently as well, I had one career. Started working in 1983, working in shoe shops, but then when I left school in 1988, I then went on to have a 20-year career in a estate agency. Left that in 2007 and got into this networking thing. And then, since 2007 now, I've been asked to write books on networking and speak on stage and that. And despite all of the outward stuff looking like I was successful, I guess, I was completely broken inside to the extent the post that I made July the 5th, 2018, I ended up being taken to a mental hospital. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about it. I never knew whether it would help people, and I'm really flattered that you say it has. I sort of wanted to get it off my chest. I felt that I was hiding something that people didn't know about me. So that's why I started talking about it.
Was it a bit cathartic, or was it, as you've said, maybe you felt like you were not putting words in your mouth, but like not cheating people? You wanted people to know the real Stef, or?
No, you've hit on exactly the right word. You've hit on exactly the right word. I felt like I was cheating people because when I've been sat down here working today, and I've been mainly just working and typing stuff today. And then when I know in 3 minutes time, I'm going to be on a podcast with Danny and I'm going to turn the video on, it's almost like I get into my stage character. And that's still me, but it's probably slightly smilier, slightly bigger version of me. And because I tell you what it is, why I felt I was cheating people, because Facebook for everyone is everyone's edited highlights, and I'm really aware of that. You don't get to see what did it used to be called on the telly? I can't remember what it used to be called. You don't get the blooper reels. You don't get the outtakes. It'll be all right on the night.
Oh,
you don't
yes,
get
yes,
those.
yes.
That's what I was thinking of.
Snowden, was it?
So when you look at my Facebook, all that people were seeing was, I've been on stage, I'm on a plane, I'm out with my sons, I'm in a pub somewhere. You didn't get to see, I was living in a shitty flat on my own. I was completely broken. At the time, I didn't have any money because my wife and I were splitting up and so on. It felt like I was doing that thing of just allowing people to see the bits that I wanted them to see, and that didn't feel quite right to me in the end.
I think we all do that, though, don't we? You know, I think we all do that, and I think it takes a brave individual to show people, you know, your blooper reel, or you know, it'll be all right on the night parts. I think it isn't. I think when it comes to mental health, there's still, although barriers have been broken down, there's still a massive stigma around it, and I think certainly with men as well. You know, we still, some of us, me included, sometimes we've got to be the one that takes everything on our shoulders, and you know, we don't suffer, but we're human, aren't we? So when you well, the best, what I loved about what you said is when you came out, you know, fantastic.
It's what it felt like. It felt, no, and that's actually, that's unfair. I've no idea what coming out as a gay person feels like, but I know from my point of view, it felt like there was a part of me that I wasn't being completely honest with people about, and that I needed people to know and understand that part of me as well. I've got much better at this. I'm age 50 now. I was 50 this year. I've got much better at not caring what people think about me. But if me having had mental health problems was enough to put people off doing business with me, then I was actually perfectly comfortable with that, and they probably weren't the right clients for me anyway. So it was that moment where I decided to just be honest about me. In the background, Danny, I had a number of male friends who I'd been chatting to for a while, who I knew that they were struggling. Going back to, I think, 2011 or maybe 2012, but you know, famously, me and Brad Burton went and had breakfast in a McDonald's at 6 o'clock in the morning when Brad was completely broken, and he, you know, he's talked openly about that. I'm not betraying any confidences. I think it is particularly time for men to understand that it's all right to not be all right for a while. I decided to do this podcast with you this afternoon, even though I'm not feeling great today. You know that I've been off sort of sick for a couple of weeks. I've got a back/leg problem. And interestingly, I've not been able to work very much in that couple of weeks. And my mood has really gone down. This is me speaking to you now really honestly. It's people won't pick it up because I'm doing what I do for a living here. I'm sort of performing. But I was really aware in the last few weeks that it wasn't just the physical stuff that was going wrong for me. I could feel my mood going down again. And well, I've lived my life not being able to admit that, because you couldn't talk to your boss or someone like that about it. It wasn't the done thing, which is why I decided to start talking about it.
So do you think now then that experience has taught you when you are, as you put it, going down a bit, where before were you not aware that you were going down, or were you aware but maybe ignoring it? What's the difference between then and now?
There's a lot of differences. I'm in a fortunate position now that I'm not in the same financial bother that I was back then. So back then, 2018 and in the years running up to that, I couldn't afford to ever take any time off. I had to keep working to keep paying the bills. And I'd gone past the edge where I was aware of what was going on. So I think now, you know, if you have a rubbish couple of weeks, it's all right. I noticed that. I'm very aware of it. I'd gone way past that point where I didn't know how down I was. And to be completely clear with your listeners, because I'm aware we've talked about me talking about it, but I haven't been specific. July the 5th, 2018, I was detained under Section 136 of the Mental Health Act, what people usually call sections, which means that I was effectively arrested by the police in the act of trying to do some harm to myself. That was what was going on, and then spent a week in a mental hospital, for want of a better word. They don't call themselves that anymore. I think the thing that changed is that when I came out of hospital, I hadn't actually had any treatment. I'd had an awful lot of time to think. I hadn't actually had any treatment. And then when I was released, I was told that there was a 14-month wait for me to be assessed for treatment. Oh, so for particularly what they thought I had, there was a 14-month wait for me to be assessed to get any treatment for
just
that.
For assessment. So that's not treatment. Yeah. That's just assessment.
Yeah. So I would apply and then wait 14 months, and they were very clear that some people drop off the waiting list at that point, and for me, I know this won't be the same for everyone, and there's no right or wrong here. For me, that realizing that the buck stopped with me, that I was going to have to work this out on my own, that was actually quite useful for me. It meant that I had to learn to get on with things, had to learn my own coping mechanisms. And so what that means now, bringing it back to the present day, is that when I feel like that, when I know that I'm getting quite fed up, that I've not been very well, not been able to work, feel like I'm letting people down because I've got regular clients and that sort of thing, I know what I need to do now. Get out for a walk, write lists of stuff so that I actually quantify how much I've got to do, so I'm not lying awake panicking. Budget, so I can see that I have actually got enough money to pay for stuff this month. We're not going to run out. It's fine. And now I know that I need to do that stuff and get regular sleep, make sure I get out in the open air and so on. Beforehand, I'd just gone past that point. I couldn't see where I was anymore, and I was doing a really good job of hiding it from the people around me as well.
So could you take us back then to how would you term it? Was it did they class it as a breakdown or what was the terminology? What can we call it?
Yeah, I don't know if there ever was any terminology really. Oh. It's really, I mean, I describe it as a breakdown because people understand that, but it wasn't. I mean, I was actually quite, I was quite lucid. I get up and get showered and get dressed every day. So one of the challenges that medical professionals still have, I didn't look the part. So in the run up to that, I all of the sort of traditional stuff, a load of really poor decisions on my part, which led to the breakup of my marriage. That was down to me, not just as a result of that, but as a result of some stuff that had happened in 2007. By 2017, I was still in a load of financial bother, to the extent that, I was having bailiffs turn up at the door of my flat and that sort of thing. I just got to the point where you just think, oh, have I got another day of this? Have I got another week of this? Am I going to have some aggressive man knocking at the door again, wanting to take my car away? That had happened a couple of weeks before. You just start to think, and then I actually, just as I'm talking to you now, which was what disturbed her the most, I put in a call to Maria, my ex-wife, and I just told her what I was going to do, purely matter of fact. Told her that I was saying goodbye, and that I'd made little packages up for each of my 3 sons, which I had. She did the right thing, even though I didn't like it for her at the time. She actually called my mum, who called 999. And if you ever want to believe in a big brother state, then the police were able to track where I was because of my registration plate, and traffic cameras. They knew exactly where I was on the road system in the county, and were able to track me down. And I was really angry with my parents for doing it at the time. I wasn't really seeing straight, or thinking straight, more to the point. But you know, in hindsight, really grateful to them for what they did at the time.
So can you, in looking back, can you see a point where all this, what the trigger was for all this to start? Because I think with things like this, it's not just one thing. It's as you've alluded to, a build-up of, you know, bad decisions which lead to consequences, which then come onto you, which you have to deal with. Can you pinpoint one aspect where, like, it was like the start pistol had gone and you could, and you know when it had all begun? Or was it can you not do that?
I don't think I can. I think it's more of a state of mind, and I know what the state of mind was for me, where it started to go wrong, and I don't know if I can pinpoint exactly this, but I thought that happiness was based on what I had, and that was in terms of, you know, what I had in material terms, what I owned, relationships, and so on. And so I found myself constantly chasing happiness or excitement, more excitement and thrill seeking. And the thing with that is that it's a never-ending game. You never have enough. You're always looking for the next thing, and it becomes exhausting, and you end up hurting a ton of people along the way as well, and spending money that you don't have on things that you don't need to impress people that you don't like. You know, very sort of middle class, Middle England stuff, really. Constantly looking for the next thing to make me happy. So, you know, I'd written the book. If I'd gone back 10 years and said, what does someone successful look like? Or, you know, take someone who's written 2 books, and at the time, you know, I'd just been director of a national company and an international company at the time, and I was speaking on international stages, and if I'd gone back, you know, 10 years, all of that was my epitome of success, and yet I didn't feel it in here. So it wasn't necessarily a tipping point, but afterwards is when I've learned that I have to look for happiness in here first. And when you crack that, I know it sounds very trite, but when you work that out for yourself, that the happiness has got to come from within you, and you've got to start or stop rather chasing stuff. It's just a never-ending chase. It exhausted me.
Why do you think then that all these things that, you know, if you'd look back 10 years and gone, God, look what I've done, of all these speaking gigs, I'm traveling Europe, I'm writing books, I'm running a national company, I'm into, you know, all these things you'd achieved and were achieving. Why do you think they weren't fulfilling you?
Not sure I'm clever enough to know, is the answer to that. I think it was that big. It for me, that period was a little bit like we've all had the big red reset button pressed this year through no fault of our own. Going into hospital was the big red reset button for me, and this year has been again as well, a chance to absolutely step back and think, I really, really don't want to end up here again. So what do I need to do now going forward to make sure that never happens again? And that's what I've done since stopped chasing stuff. Yeah, I think that answers the question. It was that there's quite a lot of things I can't really pinpoint or don't even understand myself, but I know I had to stop doing them and start doing something else to make it work.
Yeah. So in the run up to where you rang your wife and explained what was going to happen, can you remember what you actually said to her?
Not word for word, no, but what I do know, and what she's remarked on since, is that I was really, really matter of fact, which is quite a big tell, apparently, for the emergency services and that sort of thing. There wasn't any emotion left, Danny. There wasn't. This was. I had made my mind up to do something, and something that was going to upset certainly my sons, and you know, my parents, my sisters, and so on. But I had made my mind up, and I was really quite, like I say, matter of fact about it. And I think that was what shocked her the most, and that was what prompted her to to do something about it, which I'm very glad that she did.
So you're quite secure in your decision. There were no
I was at
emotion
the
around
time.
it. Like, yeah, this is going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. The police, I mean, fair play. The amount of time of the police that I wasted, or in my opinion, wasted that morning, keeping a guy on the phone who kept talking to me for an hour, and then eventually agreeing to pull over so that his mates could pick me up and that sort of thing. It was, the police, once they were on it, I have to say, do an absolutely fantastic. They're obviously very highly trained. They knew exactly what to do, exactly what to say to me, and just to get me to go on for another minute, go on for another 15 minutes, go on for another hour, so that they could remove me to a place where I couldn't do anything to myself. And that's so there's bits that I remember vividly, but it was that sort of decision had been made thing.
Can I just raise something, Stef? That what you said then is, wasting police time.
Yeah, I know.
Now I know you know this, but if like you're talking about your back and your leg, when you go to the doctors or the hospital, you don't feel you're wasting the time, do you?
No, it's and the police made that point to me, because I remember having the conversation with them, and and they it's their job, and they didn't want me to do what I was going to do, and a female police officer, I can't remember her name, but she said, we're the people who have to go and tell your family if you do it. She said, so it's not victimless. She said, had you gone through with it, I'd have had to have turned up and told your wife, your mum and dad, and she said, then I have to go home and I have to get up and go to work the next day, and don't believe it doesn't affect me having to do stuff like that. So that was, she wasn't being nasty in any way. I think I said something to her like, you guys were going to find me, and I know that you're experienced in dealing with this. And she said, don't ever believe that it doesn't affect us every time we have to do it. So no, I was smiling when I said it was, I was wasting their time, but it's something that I will say, at the time, I felt like I was wasting everyone's time. I didn't feel like I was worthy of, and this is a difficulty, because men sometimes, I won't phone Danny. Danny's busy, so I won't pick up the phone to Danny. And actually, there's a post going around Facebook. I would, I'd much rather listen to 15 minutes of your shit when you're feeling down than have to listen to your obituary afterwards. And I want blokes to know that as well, that even if I'm really, really busy, if I'm their mate and they're really not feeling it and they need to pick up the phone and talk to someone, I'll message Danny Mafaru and say, mate, can't do the podcast today. I've got something else to do. I'll not go to a meeting. I'll take that call, because sometimes you just need to talk to someone in that moment. And even if we think that no one's going to be interested and we're going to be wasting someone's time, I promise anyone who's listening that one of your mates has got time this afternoon to listen to you.
I think that's a condition of a deterioration in your mental health, isn't it, though? It's no one, such little self-worth that people have about themselves that they don't feel that anyone's bothered. Or when thinking about yourself, and when you said earlier that, obviously it would affect your sons and your immediate family, what struck me about that, and that is what I think everyone would think about first, they're the people right in front of them, but the hundreds of people that in the business scene, you probably don't think that now. Maybe now when stepping back, but the effect you not being here would have had on the business scene and your network and the people you interact with on a daily basis. And it's not tens, we're talking hundreds of people that run businesses across the UK. The impact of that would have been immense as well. So I think that's why people sometimes struggle to understand when, someone like yourself who's achieved what you've done, is normal, quote, if you know what I mean.
And it's really important for people to know that having mental health episodes, having times of poor mental health or mental illness, that's normal as well. And there was someone famously who sort of poked me a few years ago, and I think I once said somewhere that I was feeling a bit down, and they said, but compare yourself to everyone else in the world and you're actually doing really well. But it wasn't that. It's not. No one should feel guilty because, if they've made a lot of money, if they've made a successful business or a successful career, they're still entitled to feel down. They still might have mental health episodes, and we know, high profile comedians, singers, entertainers who've ended up taking their own life. Singers who are at the top of their game in the sort of music that I'm into, and so it's not to do with how well someone's doing on everyone else's measure. It's down to how they're feeling inside. And there is that point when you're chasing happiness outside of yourself. And I know Brad's talked about this as well. There is that point when all of a sudden, I've got the book, I'm speaking on stage in Europe, and you're thinking, but it ain't worked. I've got over the lines that if I achieve this, I'll be successful, but I'm still not feeling it in here. And I think that comes to a lot. I'm sure it comes to a lot of people. I think it comes to a lot of men. When we've got the title, it says, who we are on our business card, but we're still not feeling that success in here.
Yeah. I read a lot, listen to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of books, watch a lot of YouTube videos, and everyone says that, there's all these people that'll say, I'll be happy when I get that posh, when I get that sports car, when I get that big house, I'll be happy. And they say, no, you won't be, because that is not where happiness comes from. And I think, it's what you've alluded to, all these things you achieved. And, I still see you now walking on stage and giving was it like that? Was it? And you were on fire, and for someone to, if you could pause that and go, this guy here is, struggling with his mental health, who would have believed you?
Yeah, I watched a documentary the other night about a comedian who was really everywhere in the 1990s, a guy called Tony Slattery, who ended up drinking a lot, and alcoholism is his particular condition, illness. But he was on the telly every night, and the other people that we know, the George Bests, the people like that, who no matter what they've done, they've still got that inner demon that leads them to drink. Drinking was a part of my issue as well, and leads them to other things. And again, I think we've also got some quite unhealthy role models in that quite a lot of the people who we see, who you and I probably watch every day on places like YouTube, give this impression that we should all be able to get up and do a 15-hour day every day, that everything will be fine. Do you just roll with the rejection, get used to people saying no, learn to love your failures and everything like that? And I think a load of that's really unhealthy, because actually sometimes I get really pissed off, or I make a bad decision in business, and it's all right, I think, to allow that to affect you a little bit, and not to feel guilty that you should be somehow aspiring to these huge unhealthy role models, that nothing should affect you mentally or emotionally.
I agree with you totally. I think a lot of these people that are the people you're talking about, I think they're speaking with hindsight. They'll have most likely experienced what everyone else experienced, but they've either learned, to see the triggers and deal with them, or paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for someone to help them with it. Where so many people speak in hindsight. A lot of business people, oh, well, do this, do that. And I thought, well, when you just started out, did you know any of this? No, well, don't expect me to. And that's, I think, with mental health. It's when you're starting out on your mental health journey, you just don't know. Personally, that's my opinion. And I feel that, like I see your mental health like your fingerprint completely. And utterly.
It is. It's such a personal thing. And I think you're right. I'm 50 years old now. I've got a lot of that behind me. I can look back and give advice now. And at the same time, everyone has to live it for themselves. And if we can just make someone else pick up the phone once, or make someone else realize that it's not just you're not the only man who's struggling with this, and you shouldn't feel guilty about talking to your doctor about it or talking to someone about it. I would love to. I never set out on this little journey thinking that it would help people. It was more selfish. It was more to help myself. But I would love to think that just one more person might pick up the phone, and that would actually be a bonus. That really would.
You may have already, just when you said that, as you've said it, something struck me, and I'm thinking, well, this guy here has written 3 books on something you're an authority on. What are you going to write a book on this?
Yeah, we started it, and I paused it. I started it a year or 18 months ago as a joint project with my wonderful friend Lisa Cherry. Lisa she's been a big part of my networking journey, and she is actually a proper academic expert on all of this stuff, on trauma and resilience and psychology. And I started writing it, and something wasn't quite right, and so chapter 1 and 2 are written, and they're sat there. What was going to happen was that the book was going to be my way of telling people about my story, and then it felt fairer, is the best word I can come up with, to the people around me, if I dealt with the sort of coming out with it in a different way, not just in a book, because obviously I've talked to you this afternoon about my mum and dad's role in it, about my ex-wife's role in it, and so on, and it felt fairer to them, and to my sisters and people like that, if all of that wasn't written down in a book the first time that people read it. That probably makes more sense to me than it does to anyone else. But
totally understand it.
I started writing the book, and I just wasn't comfortable with it. That was and I'm an awful lot of people have come out in the last couple of years as mental health experts, and I'm not even an expert in Stef Thomas's mental health, so I don't pretend to be an expert in anyone else's. And so there was part of me that just felt I'm not the right person to write this book. I should leave it to people who aren't actually. There is a danger sometimes with all of this, that it is people's lives that we're potentially affecting. So I just felt, writing the book, started it, pulled away from it.
You see, I'm just me to you, Stef. I think you're obviously a fantastic author. So, you're an expert at writing a book, shall we say. You obviously now know you've done the full, if you like, 360 mental health journey. And I don't mean that in disrespect to your mental health or anyone's. I just think if you wrote a book, it would be fantastic. And I think people that, you'd have hundreds of people buying it off the bat anyway, that know you. But I think it'd be invaluable, Stef. I do. I think if you did it, it'd be brilliant.
I'm really flattered that you say it, and you know this. I mean, you and I have talked about this in the past, but when you do something in business, for me, I have to really, really feel it, and I just wasn't feeling it at the time. It might come when the time's right for me, but you know what it's like. You particularly. Writing a book is hundreds of hours of effort to put into it, and for me, I have to really want to do that to get behind it. And I have to be able to see and hear exactly what the finished product's going to look like, and I haven't got that straight either. I don't know exactly how the book begins and ends.
You can't force it, as you say. You can't force writing a book. I can understand that. But when you talk about the role that your family played in it, is there any specific part or anything that hits you that you think has helped you get to where you are now, that anyone said or did? Or
I think it's a bizarre thing, but I didn't think that anyone would be asked if I wasn't here. And I'm not
laughing because that's funny.
I'm not overstating that. I thought that people might be upset for a little while, but I didn't think it would be. And actually, my mum was quite honest with me that morning about how she was feeling, and we've talked about it since, and that. And this isn't to say that they didn't care, because they always did. but there was something, I really realized around that period that people really did care. And having got that behind me, someone, again, Facebook memes, there's something on Facebook that says sometimes you have to break down completely before you can rebuild. And I've been able to rebuild the person that I should have been in the first place, rather than constantly putting this mask on that I was someone else. And an example of that is that you and I are a week late recording this, because last week I was honest enough to say to you with my bad leg, which is all it is. But with that, I just wasn't. I wouldn't have come across in the right way. I was so fed up a week or so ago. I didn't want to do this with you. 3 years ago, I would have just gone ahead and done it and put on an act and felt worse afterwards. These days, I've got much better at saying, right, let's look at my diary. Actually, I don't have to do that today if I'm really not feeling it. It's all of that sort of thing that I think I've rebuilt myself to be the person who I should have been beforehand. That's what it feels like now.
So when you said that you didn't think people would be asked, that to me, obviously, not obviously, but if someone is at the point of taking the life, the self-esteem can't get any lower. And how have you actively built your self-esteem back up? You talk about becoming this person that you should have been. What are you doing to become the person that you should have been?
I've become a lot more grateful for the little things, and I've learned to understand that the little things are the big things. So I've stopped chasing stuff. I stopped chasing, I don't know, material possessions and excitement and things like that, and actually learnt consciously to look at what I have got and realize how grateful I should be for that. And as a result of that, some more things have come into my life. I live with my partner Sharon these days, and that only happened when I really got to grips with who I was, that I met the right person for me. And it was that there's a book, and I can't remember the name of the author to name check her, but the book is called The Froth on the Cappuccino, and it's a great book about just appreciating the little things in life, about going out for a walk and realizing that life's pretty good, that the world is pretty beautiful, and I wake up in a warm bed in a dry room every day, and just starting to accept a little and being mindful and noticing the little things, and realizing that I had enough money was the point at which the business started to take off. So then, we've got more than we need. Focusing constantly on whether I would have enough money was one of the things that was bizarrely leading me to not have enough. That's a little bit out there, but it's a question of focus and belief and so on. So it's
how have you flipped that then? Just using the money as an example, then how have you flipped it from concerning yourself all the time if you've got enough to then sort of, I don't know if the right term's accepting or understanding, because I've read and seen and felt myself that when you stop chasing stuff, sometimes it can come, maybe law of attraction, maybe some people believe in that. So what did you do to flip that, your relationship with money? How did you change that?
I actually worked with someone, the very wonderful Cressy Landless. Hey Cressy, I worked with the very wonderful Cressy Landless, and I don't actually quite know what she did, but in a few sessions with Cressy, I talked to her about what I described as a working class glass ceiling. I'd always grown up knowing that certain people made money and certain people didn't, and I was definitely one of the ones who didn't. It wasn't my place in life to do that.
What made you think that, Stef?
I just think because I came out of the sort of traditional working class background, where grandfather was a barber, my other grandfather was a butcher, even though he'd risen to be the manager of a number of butchers' shops and that sort of thing. And you sort of knew your place in life. I don't often do the sort of working class bit, but I did grow up on a council estate. I did. You know, there were other people who had big expensive cars and that sort of thing. And I think when you've just had that sort of reinforced throughout your childhood, not necessarily by my parents, but just by society. Just by life. There were posh people at school and they were different to us somehow. I didn't really know how, but I knew that I wasn't one of them. And yeah, I think I needed that shaking out of me. And it was, you know, it was in my late 40s before I got myself shook out of that.
Do you think that's why you were chasing material things then? Due to
do you know what? I think there's some pride, some perverse, ridiculous pride in not having and having your back up against the wall. I've talked about this to a couple of people, but never publicly like this, that something about me really thrived on that, talking myself out of tight situations, negotiating myself out of debt, out of something about me, loved that a little bit too much. I enjoyed the struggle too much, and you know, had grown up surrounded by struggle, certainly in the early part of my life. You know, the friends and family and that sort of thing just only ever just had enough money to scrape through. And I think, yeah, there was a bit too much pride in being that person. And I think it's perverse when you look back at it. There was something about the bailiffs at the door, the dealing with debt collectors and that sort of thing, that somehow I was thriving on it for far too long.
Right.
And yeah, it's a weird one. It's something that I don't even completely understand myself.
Right. So what did Cressy do then to change your relationship with money? Or what did you do? What did she help you with?
I think we knew that I don't really know, because some of it was done in a sort of hypnosis and NLP setting, and also it's sort of Cressy's trademark, so I'll leave her to still be able to make money out of that. But it was looking at the different aspects of me, the aspect that believed I was entrepreneurial, but also the one who thrived and had a bit of probably a chip on my shoulder unconsciously about not ever breaking through, not ever quite making it, being the underdog. And I was always a bit too comfortable in that position, really, even though, you know, someone who've written books and that sort of thing should, which is a terrible word, but, you know, could definitely have been achieving more and that sort of thing. It was, got there in the end anyway.
Yeah. So you've, what we're sort of saying is you've accessed professional help as well, you know, to move on, or, you know, move forward, or become.
I'm really lucky because, yes, I used to be national network director for a very for networking, for, it's not the BBC, is it? I can talk about things, but, you know, for a very large networking organisation. I obviously talk about networking, so I've got a very big network of people. And one of the great things about that is that when someone like Cressy comes into your life, who I just knew was the right therapist, counsellor, coach for me, that I was able to work with her. And then we get back to the bit about building the person that I should have been, because from then on, I've been able to be a lot more patient, not constantly chasing the next pound, but realising that if I'm patient and do things in the way that I always should have done them, that the rewards in the medium to long term are much greater than the rewards in the short term. And I've got good at that now, much better at that.
Are you spiritual? You know, and what I mean by that is, people, you know, talk about law of attraction and affirmations and things like that. Is that sort of thing you practice, or?
On and off. Not great at. I'm born and raised a Catholic, so spiritual in that respect. Certainly believe in the law of attraction and that sort of thing. I'm not great at practicing it. I keep meaning to do meditation and that sort of thing, and then not quite doing it. Affirmations, I never quite get round to either. So it's not been that. It's been a more fundamental belief, and getting back to being patient, and giving loads and loads of advice out for free, which I do now, and knowing that the rewards will come. Something that I'd always believed in. If I did enough putting stuff out there that enough would come back. It's really difficult to do that when you've got to pay the mortgage in 3 days and you've got to make sales. I realise I'm in a really fortunate position these days, but yeah, that was part of building back up who I should be.
So do you have like a routine now that you follow, day to day, month to month, week to week? What things are you conscious of now to keep you from, maybe taking a couple of steps back, shall we say?
Yeah, for me, it's been the whole thing that working hard, which I was brought up to believe was a real virtue, working long hours and that sort of thing, actually isn't necessarily what's right for me. And it's not right for a lot of entrepreneurs either. I take time off every day now, and Sharon and I go for a walk if we can, go out for lunch or breakfast when, as we're recording this, we can't do that, obviously, but when they're all open again, working 4 days a week, which is, I say it's a recent thing. It's not that recent, but in the last couple of months, I've sort of formalized that, and I don't work Fridays anymore. Realizing that I personally can be more effective working less hours and having more rest than going flat out all the time and burning myself out every couple of years. And it's that sort of realization, that sort of rebuilding my life in a way that suits me. And I know that's maybe not helpful, because it's not, I don't have a magic hour every morning when I do affirmations and that sort of thing. That's never been my bag, really.
Yeah. So there's no magic bullet, is there? You just sort of, like I say, it's personal. So what works for you might not work for me, and vice versa. But I do feel that there's a theme of what you're saying, and it might not work for everyone taking Friday off, and it might not work for everyone going out for breakfast every day. But a lot of the stuff you've said totally and utterly 100% resonates with me. With what you've said, and the patience aspect of it. Being more patient and things like that, and chasing and things like that. It certainly, resonated with me on a personal level as well. So I'm sat here thinking, shit. I need to be more. I am aware of the things you're telling me, but I don't do anything about it. Because I'm just so busy.
Yeah, I've learned that you don't have to be busy all the time, and it's horrible because there's so much reinforcement that we need to, and you need to be constantly chasing it. And I love Gary Vaynerchuk, and on my bookcase here, I've got a ton of Gary Vaynerchuk books, but that whole working 15, 18 hours a day, that whole hustle thing for me was just unhealthy. And I'm good with that. I'm good with, I'm maybe not going to be as rich as I would have been. But I'm enjoying life now. And that for me is, one of the things
it's finding that I think you're juggling, not you, but you're juggling all the time, like you say, well, doing all this work to get this, but then it maybe not fulfilling me anyway, and trying to find that balance of, and I think it's, I don't know whoever has got that, and it'll make a ton of money on it, because, who knows what that is. But I think, what you said and everything you've said resonates with so many people, especially the entrepreneurial side of you. When you were saying about you having your back to the wall and being under pressure, a lot of entrepreneurs are like that, weren't they? Where they're not procrastinate, but they're only effective when they're in the trenches.
Yeah.
And if everything's going smooth, I've known and read and heard of people that actually, sabotage.
I've done that to myself so many times over the years. Smashed it up, and not really known why. But not completely been comfortable with, never been completely comfortable with, a fair wind when everything's steady.
Yeah. And I've read that and seen with so many entrepreneurs that, it's a bit boring, and they like a bit of chaos and a bit of pressure and things like that, and a bit of self-sabotage and things. So no, Stef, for sharing this, I really, really, really appreciate it. And I know, you've said things like, I didn't think anyone would be bothered. And, what do you feel proud of yourself for telling people, or for sharing your experiences?
No, no, that's not why I did it. It's not, I do feel proud of myself for some things. I feel proud of myself for writing the books. That was you know, I've got a business which is doing all right. I feel proud of myself for that. I feel very proud of my sons, but no, not this. This is, and I don't feel proud of myself for having appendicitis in the past either, or having broken my ankle. And I think that's the thing, Danny. It shouldn't be, mental health shouldn't be any more unusual or out of the ordinary than the fact that, you know, I had my appendix out when I was 25. I'm not proud of that, and I'm not proud of the fact that my mental health. Yeah, do you know what I mean by that? It's just, I do. It's something that's just me. It's just part of all of us, and I'd love to get to the stage where that's just the same for everyone. That we can talk about that. We don't have to be embarrassed about going to the doctor about that any more than we do about the fact that we've broken our ankle.
Yeah, but I think more people, you know, with your profile, you know, doing things like this, you know, not my little podcast, but putting things on Facebook, and hopefully, I think at some point doing a book, Stef. You know, and you know, I'm not trying to, you know, map your next stage thing for you, but literally speaking about this on stage and stuff, Stef. You know, because I think, you know, going back to when I've seen you on stage, there's been 300, 400, 500 people in that audience, probably more. Every one of them will have at some time struggled or had a deterioration in their mental health. So it's like it's a ubiquitous thing that we've all got. So, you know, it's not, you know, sometimes if you're speaking on stage and you're talking about, I don't know, selling jam, not everyone likes jam. So some might switch off. Where with what you've discussed here and what you've experienced and what you're, you know, overcoming, if that's the correct term. And I think I was trying to be careful that I don't, you know, sort of underplay or use terms that are disrespectful to what people have gone through, you know, so like overcoming it. Is it wrong? Is it right? I don't know, but I'm trying to, you know, just say that when you go in, this journey you're on and what you've achieved, and then what you've achieved now to be where you are now after what you experienced, you know, if I had a hat, I'd take it off, because I just think, you know, you seem so, just looking at you and listening to you now, you seem so calm and relaxed and at ease with yourself.
Yeah, I think I am now. I think I am. I think that's accurate as well. You know, I'm in a better place than I have been for years. And that's probably a good end to this conversation, because for all of those people who are going through it, there is another side. I know that everyone's told this, and it's sometimes really, really difficult to believe it, but there is another side of it. You do come out of the darkness in the end, and I know that from my experience and from other wonderful people around me who I've spoken to who've been through it themselves. And I'm all right now. I'm enjoying stuff.
Brilliant, Stef. Well, thanks so much again. I really, really, really appreciate this. Good luck with the next book.
Thank you, mate.
Because you've got to do it. You've got to do it. And thanks so much. I'll catch you up soon, Stef.
Yeah, will do. Thanks ever so much, Danny.
Take care. Cheers, bud.